Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Alessandro Canossa, the Program Chair for the Conference Foundation of Digital Games 2021. I'm here with Dr. Luke Dicken. Luke, I had a look at your background. It's very varied, very interesting. You have quite a very high-profile academic background. So I'd like to ask you to talk about your line of studies, why you chose to study AI and computer science, and your specialization.
Absolutely, yeah. So I kind of got interested in AI as a field because of games. So way back in kind of the early 90s, there was this game called Creatures. And Creatures was a spin out from the University of Cambridge. This was a little bit after the Tamagotchi craze, but it was effectively like a Tamagotchi on steroids. And you had this side-on world, these little kind of furry, fuzzy things were walking around in. And the cool thing was that you could teach them things, you could train them, they could play with things in the world, so you could kind of throw a ball backwards and forwards with the little hand that you controlled, and you could breed them. And all of that was being backed by like a neural net representation of what these animals were and kind of what they looked like. And this was probably, like I say, early teens. And I kind of looked at this and went, wow, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. At which point I was like, right, this is what I want to do with my life. Then I started kind of diving in and trying to kind of really read about this stuff, and ended up with stacks of like papers that I'd printed out. And, you know, early teenager. So I got these papers. And I was kind of, it was a very kind of performative, look at me, I'm so fucking intelligent. Understood maybe one word in 4. And it was kind of just being a precocious, kind of intelligent seeming, certainly wanting to project the intelligence of, oh yes, I'm reading papers. But one of the things that was really cool about kind of growing up in Scotland is that, when it came time to go to University of Edinburgh was right on my doorstep. And it was actually the ideal kind of distance away, I reckon. It was about 2 hours from home, which is far enough away that you have your independence, but close enough that when you're having a shitty weekend, pack everything up, take your laundry home. It was brilliant. But University of Edinburgh was kind of a pioneering AI institution, kind of maybe a little bit kind of before that time. But certainly like going to an institution where you're being taught by some of the people who like wrote a flavor of Prologue or designed a thing. It was a really good opportunity to kind of really dig in and understand kind of conceptual philosophy of AI type stuff. And then it got time to start thinking about kind of, well, graduated, didn't really know what to do next. So like, well, what if I did a master's? Graduated, didn't really know what to do next. What if I did a PhD? And then sniffing around for what I was going to do for the PhD, I ended up having a couple of conversations, which were very kind of, I remember one of them specifically. I said, look, I want to do something real. I don't want, I am not going to want to get out of bed in the morning to make some algorithm like 1% more efficient or I want to push boundaries. And the guy that I was talking to at Edinburgh said, you know what you should do? There's this guy over at University of Strathclyde. You should go have a chat with him. I joined this kind of research team that was focused on automated planning and that kind of stuff. But inside of that group, there was this little gang of folks who were really interested in games as well. So my supervisor, Tommy Thompson, who runs the FDG21 stuff, familiar name to everybody. Bram Ritter was there. Bram just presented, as we were recording this yesterday, at the GDC AI Summit on the work he's doing at Rebellion. And there was this like little nascent kind of games research group that we were kind of forming there. So I started work, frankly, I took longer over the PhD than I'm comfortable admitting out loud. But mostly that was because like, it turns out that I'm not a long projects kind of guy. I like to do a thing and then move on to the next thing. And that's actually what I did. I kind of worked on the thesis for a wee bit, got the research to a point where I was pretty confident that what I was building would work. And then I was like, cool, I'm going to go do some contract work in the industry. I'm going to kind of move on with things a little bit. And eventually got to a place where the university were sort of starting to mutter about kicking me out. And I was like, okay, time to write up and finish and be done with this. And about that time is when Zynga approached me and they said, hey, do you want to come to San Francisco, do data science with us? And I was like, sure, what's data science? And we talked about what data science was for a little bit. And I was like, oh, so you mean that data science is just like 80s AI techniques being repackaged and rebranded? Excellent, I can do that. And that's how I ended up in San Francisco working at Zynga. I mean, you know, Zynga was I think I can say this out loud. When the recruiter kind of approached me and I said, oh yeah, okay, I'll take a chat. And the email that I got was like, recruiting on behalf of an unnamed Bay Area studio with executive from this company. And in hindsight, it was Zynga. But I took the call, got on the phone with this recruiter, and she's like, yeah, so I'm recruiting on behalf of Zynga. And my shoulders visibly slumped. And I was just like, oh. Because Zynga had a bad reputation in those days. You know, there was a lot of, I had a particularly close friend who was working there. The work-life balance was not necessarily great. Facebook games didn't have the greatest reputation. But the more I talked to people there, the more that there was this vision and opportunity that was really compelling to me at that time. And a lot of that is, you know, when you've got a broad portfolio of broad portfolio of games, and inherently your platform is always online, which the Facebook platform had to, you know, it was probably one of the things that gave Zynga its opportunity was the fact that, you know, Facebook was always online in a way that most game platforms were not at that time. And that allowed us to be kind of pioneers in the game analytics space. And that meant that we were logging more data than pretty much anyone. And the opportunity of using that data was really compelling. Like it really aligned with some of my ideas at the time about kind of like how we could go about building better things and being, you know, we talk about being data driven in general across like tech startups, but what they really generally mean is that the data is driving the product managers. And what they often mean is that the product manager is finding the one piece of data that validates their belief and shouting very loudly about it. And it was just the opportunity at Zynga was to really kind of come in and really think about what data-driven games could be. And that's been the last 7 years.
So look, in the industry, there's a lot of people talking about the battle for playtime. So what matters is not so much acquiring new users, but to keep them for the long run. Are you working like according to that paradigm, or you're trying to max numbers, or both of them?
So it's interesting, right? Because I mean, Zynga as a whole has different philosophies just because of the size of it. Different studios or different game teams are approaching things differently. So I wouldn't like to speak for the company as a whole, but my personal philosophy and what I'm kind of bringing to the table in my team is that maximizing playtime, at least as an optimization problem, is the wrong way of thinking about it. And I think that it's very easy, particularly in the mobile space, to see how when you set, it's the core thing, right? Measure what matters, and then the metric becomes the thing that you optimize for, but it's a proxy for what you actually want, which actually means that you end up optimizing for something that you don't want. So you can imagine a world, and this is kind of universal paperclip's philosophical problem, but if I say I want to maximize engagement, then, and I just go AI system, maximize engagement, then it ends up nailing phones to people's hands and beating them if they're not playing the game. And that's not what we're looking for, right? So the way that I think about it is not in terms of maximizing retention or playtime, but sustaining. So if you come into the game and you're playing 2 sessions a day for your first week, let's say, then when you drop to 1 session a day, that's a negative signal. Mm. But at the same time, if I take you up to 3 sessions a day or more, chances are I'm actually going to burn you out. That's not what you're necessarily looking for. And this is kind of where the philosophy of sustainability really kicks in, right? Because when you think about what those fitness functions to the optimization algorithms looks like, when you set it as a maximization, you end up bringing in like dark or allowing space for dark patterns to exist.
Thank you. When you joined Zynga, how much agency were you given in terms of team, scope, tasks?
I mean, I joined Zynga in late 2014. And we were in an interesting spot, which was that the data science team was pretty new. We were, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 people. And the CEO and a couple of the VPs would get up every opportunity, every all hands meeting, they'd be up there talking about how machine learning was a silver bullet and was going to solve everything for everybody. So pretty much every game had been this, like, given this executive mandate that they had to incorporate machine learning somehow. And that, with a team as small as ours was centrally, led to some really bad ideas. So the first 6 months, my role was basically looking at things and going, yeah, that's terrible. We shouldn't do that. And in terms of agency, it's varied over the years, and I've bounced around kind of trying to find a home. In general, Zynga is, it's a welcoming culture. They're open to new ideas. They're open to kind of exploring things, but finding ways to actually make that happen can be tricky. So in the first few years, I bounced around quite a bit, and then kind of ended up leading the central analytics function and kind of got quite a bit more agency in that function. Like, there's certain OKRs to hit, and there's certain kind of must-do projects come up. But at the same time, we were able to kind of do some interesting procedural generation work, just kind of on the down. I think about it as broccoli and ice cream. Mm-hmm. There are broccoli projects that you kind of just have to do, but if you do enough of them, you build up the credibility to get the ice cream project. And then about 2 years ago, we carved my team out. So we've been really focused on kind of ensuring that our analytics stack was modernized and kind of fit for purpose for kind of the 2019 forwards. And we hadn't really spent a lot of time kind of on the really blue sky forward-looking stuff. And that's where kind of my team got created 2 years ago. The Applied AI team kind of exists to explore what the opportunities are around AI generally, but we have a fairly tight focus at the moment on the computational creativity side, simply because we have teams already that exist for optimizations and ML around more business facing and also incremental opportunities. So this was okay, go figure out where we need to be 5 years from now and figure out how we get there in 3.
Wow, okay. How many are you now?
So right now we are 8 full-time and 5 interns. And a bunch of those interns have actually come from the FDG community over the last few years, in fact. So Chris Miller, Melanie Dickinson have presented at FDG in the past. They're now full-time employees on our team. We've got Abhijit Krishnan, Anurag Sarkar, who I believe is part of the organizing committee for FDG. We've got a whole range of people, but kind of FDG is one of our prime kind of if you're presenting here, you probably are interested in the work we're doing, and we're interested in the work you're doing.
And can you give us a quick overview of the background of the 8 + 5 team members you have?
Sure. So we are primarily data science. Well, what we call data scientists. data science is a label that we slap on people because we don't know what else to call people, and setting up a new bureaucratic job family is tough. But we have a couple of people who are like traditional data scientists. So, for example, my data science manager is a fantastic woman called Yang Wen. She's got a background in like ad tech and optimizations for ad tech, and then she's been working alongside this team, kind of applying that those technical abilities into the kind of more computational creativity work. Like I say, people like Melanie, Chris, core kind of computational creativity folks. We needed like engineering support, so we've got 3 engineers supporting us. They're led by Michelle Del Rosario is our kind of technical director and engineering manager. I'm just shouting everybody out as we go through the list. We added an intern producer. We have then added an engineering intern and 3 data science interns. So broadly, it's AI people with a bit of support from engineering people, because it turns out we're not always great engineers, and you probably shouldn't put like, so we've actually shipped a game from this team, and it turns out we don't necessarily write great production code for Unity. So bringing in some client engineers was really essential. And now we're kind of starting to think about what building the team out could look like. You know, we outsource all of our art, for example, and I don't think that's necessarily a sustainable approach. But also, you know, product management is a discipline. UX is a discipline. We're fortunate that we've been approved for a production intern because we had no producer. You know, we shipped a game with no game designer, no producer, no product manager. Just we shipped with 5 data scientists, 3 engineers, which is not how you should do that, it turns out. Which game is that? It's called Spell Forest. You can find it on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store.
I'm going to check it out, 100%.
It has some rough edges. It's probably more polished than it has any right to be. But Spellforest is actually built on a completely novel tech stack that we kind of created. That, in fact, FDG last year, I was really hoping that I could come and present about that tech stack. Legal prevented it because the patents they wanted to file were not. The day I gave the presentation at FDG was supposed to be the day that they filed the patents, and we were going to be clear to talk about it, and they actually slipped by a day. So I wasn't able to talk about it last year. But effectively what we do is we kind of unify the analytics approach and the kind of play style identification and kind of persona clustering. So we've got that piece of the puzzle. We feed that forwards into a procedural content system. We've got a whole simulation architecture to try to validate the procedural content. And then we're able to deliver that over the air on a per player basis. And kind of the aim of the whole thing is to kind of create this automated pipeline where personalization on a per player basis, based on your wants and kind of how you're interacting with the game, is achievable. And my belief is that is, you know, free to play in general. The business math sucks. You know, user acquisition is high. Like the cost to install somebody into your game, really high. So your advertising cost, massive. And then most of those people are maybe not even coming back for a second day because they're going to play it, not like it, leave. But if you could adapt kind of what that game is and start to kind of customize it a little bit. I mean, taken to its extreme, you could imagine a world where people come into a game like Farmville, and we sort of, based on the machine learning and the play style clustering and all the rest, we're like, we think you don't like farms. Here's a letter. Why don't you go live in the city? And now you're playing Cityville. Now, there's some like App Store terms of service stuff about changing the game that drastically under people's feet. But you can imagine kind of the concept, at least, because once we've actually paid to get you in the door, the kind of the impetus from my point of view, like I say, sustainability, but sustainability means giving you what you want. And if we give you what you want, you'll hang around longer. If you hang around longer, chances are you're either earning more money for us through advertising, through just seeing ads, or you're going to play the game for a while and be like, yeah, okay, I'll buy the 99 cent, $1.99, whatever. So that's kind of the impetus of the tech stack and kind of a high level of how it works. I mean, the trick throughout the whole thing is kind of getting all of those pieces talking to each other and then in a format where they can talk to the game. Yeah. But if you can do all of that, and it turns out you can, then you win. And you're able to take 8 people, put out a game, and then live ops that game for about 6 months and actually run like experimentation in near real time across an entire player base.
That sounds really interesting. Look, this year's theme for Foundation Digital Game is diversity. I heard the names you mentioned. Can you give us a breakdown of the gender for the team member you have there?
I can, but I don't have that in front of me. I think, if you give me 1 second while I'm writing it down and vamping at the same time, but...
Okay, we can edit this part.
No, we don't need to edit it. We can make it interesting. The cool thing is that either by the time this session is out, or by the time you are at the end of the conference, so I don't know what the ordering of operations is, you will actually have seen a technical presentation from the team, and most of the team is going to be contributing to that. So you'll be able to see a lot of kind of what's going on there. I want to say we are, I think we are 7 of 13 men, whatever the remainder is. Yeah, seven men, 6 women, I believe.
That's pretty
so we are about 50-50 gender split. We are about 50-50 POC split. And we have, because we're in the US, obviously, this is a US-centric stat, but we are something like 25% non-US. Mm-hmm. Or I should say non-North American now that we've got some Canadian folks on the team. So, you know, I'm actually, and this happened very much by accident. Well, I can't say by accident, but we didn't set out with like quotas or anything. But I'm really happy with the extent to which this team has ended up being very diverse, because at the end of the day, you know, my take is always that different backgrounds, different experiences lead to different perspectives on things. And, you know, living around San Francisco, I've lost count of how many like young white guys who've gone through Stanford or Berkeley that I've come across in my time. And like, okay, great. Once I've got one of you, I know what the second of you is going to tell me. But like having so many different kind of backgrounds and perspectives, and also like different disciplines represented. You know, one of the things that I actually actively go out of my way to hire for is people who have like low-key multi-classes. So I don't have a game design headcount, but a couple of my data scientists actually have good game design sets. And, you know, the ways that they pick that up is you know, varied. But at the end of the day, you know, more different voices in the room leads to better products. I believe that very fundamentally.
Look, thank you very much. I think this covers the time slot we have. Do you have anything you would like to add?
So the one thing that I wish I was able to add is look for our internships. They're online now, and they're not actually online yet. So we'll be reaching out to all the usual places. You can keep an eye for those opportunities probably on Twitter. So follow me. I'm at Luke D. And when we are recruiting, that's where those positions will be advertised. I mean, they'll be advertised other places as well, but you can find them there.
Great. Thank you very much.